in the truest millennial way that I can, even though we are states apart. This is my, I like that. I like that. Also, I'm convinced that Latinas don't age, so I'm a little angry about that, just for the record. Jeans, man. Well, Heather, I asked, and then you're just looking at your phone.
Oh, no, that's completely fine.
But, so Heather and I engaged on my post on TikTok that kind of blew up, where I was just kind of awesome, and I'm stealing the title of about how what we see now is not what it started out as. And what I really would love to talk to you about, Heather, is as a Christian, I was associates with, for better or for what was it before the Western Christianity, Catholicism narrative really took hold?
I'll be honest with you, the way that Judaism has evolved has been very much influenced by Western Christianity, and then that has leaked over to other countries, but mostly it started here in the U.S. So Judaism is an Abrahamic faith.
Okay.
I do not tend to say Judeo-Christianism because we aren't linked that way. So you'll hear a lot of people will say, fellow man, our love of God built on.
Okay.
And that is from actually one of our books in Talmud, the Pirkei Avot.
Okay.
So we talk about what Judaism is based on is those three items.
Okay. Now, my question for you is, well, actually, I have learned, someone brought into my consciousness the idea that there is a large portion of Christianity that's anti-Semitic. And I never understood that reality because, of course, I was coming at it from the narrative of the group in power, the group that was centered, right? Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's important to notice, like you said, Judeo-Christian is not a thing, really.
No. So it is really a regular occurrence for Christians to love Israel and dislike Jews. Behind, that harkens back to belief. So it's very popular in Christianity to love Israel. Don't connect Jews to Israel.
And the Bible, the Bible are different. And even the way that the Old Testament is arranged is different than the way the Torah is arranged. So the Christian Old Testament and the Torah are not synonymous. So, but there is this conflation of the modern day state of Israel with the notion of the nation of Israel.
Of Israel from the Bible, and that's what they connect to. Not realizing when they connect that then to the state of Israel, those are not the same thing. And the state of Israel does not represent Judaism in the diaspora, the Jew. I feel connected to Jews around the world. But my first love is the U.S. That is where I'm born.
Yeah.
Yes, that is definitely my cultural context. And I have family and I have friends who live in Israel. And I love those people, but very complex feelings.
Right. That is, yeah. And I'm actually hoping to get together a sort of panel to have a discussion about that later. So I'll probably just give us an overview of some of the ways in which Christianity distorts what Judaism is and how it becomes anti-Semitic, in terms maybe theologically, thought-wise. Is that something you tackle for us a little bit?
So what I have noticed, especially because Jesus was a Jew, doesn't that mean Jew? Yes and no. Jesus was a Jew in terms of Judaism's kind of appropriate for their churches when they have no context from where it comes from.
You know what I've seen?
A prime example of that.
Go ahead.
A prime example of that would be, well, historically, and I'm saying this as a person who holds a PhD in theology, it was not. The Passover, yes, Jesus participated in it, and that was it. But after the distinctly different. It is, and pardon my French, no fucking business of Christians to be taking something that is not theirs.
Yeah.
Because they think it's cute to eat some matzah for a week.
Right.
It's,
Right. No. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Something that's been really interesting to me is I go to a Christian seminary called Chicago Theological Seminary, but my But I also have had some encounters with professors who are actually Jewish. Like some of my professors are rabbis first. And so I've been hearing theism, like the pockets, because like, yes, like you said, Jesus was a Jew, but like there is so much more. Like Jesus wasn't doing a lot of the stuff that the Jewish folks of the day were doing.
No. And the thing is that just like in Christianity or all of Judaism have a pluralistic rabbi, meaning that I've studied with rabbis from every stream of Judaism because I wanted to be able to help Jews from multiple streams of Christian. So I wouldn't say that I think that I think that Christian perspective on Judaism, then how are you Jewish? I had this actually happen to me. I encountered a gentleman who said that because I was wearing colorful clothes, and I'm like, are you really going to explain my own faith to me?
Please mansplain Judaism to me.
Are we doing this? We do. We have hippie Jews. You know, we have different types of Middle East, Russia, Germany. Those have become the iconograph of what Jews look like. So not realizing that Jews come in every race, color, gender, presentation, sexuality.
Yeah.
We just are.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? I love that. And I think I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on actual, like, returning to the center of ancient Judaism. What is it that you would describe to be the thing as represented as the Godhead, right? The Trinity. There's these kind of accepted Augustinian ideas of what Christianity is. Now, of course, there's different groups of Christianity, right? Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists still claim Christianity, right? But if you were to tell me from your perspective as someone who has lived this, studied this, intentionally ingested Judaism, what is the sense influence on Judaism?
I think that is when you say faith and Hitler on the roof and going against tradition, not wanting to move forward.
Right.
And I believe one of the historically gone through a lot of turmoil, and that is one of the reasons I feel that Jews are so very closed off. You know, you have a generational tragedy that has been shared by Jews worldwide. The main part for me and what keeps me Jewish is my faith in the way I translate Torah to help and be a service of other Jews. So I feel that what has happened, and I've watched this because I'm 40. We have a holiday called Purim. And it is where we read the Megillah of Esther and what she did to save her people from annihilation. Traditionally, you would dress up as these characters from the book. Now I'm 45, and people are dressing up like they would for Halloween. It's almost become this Halloween for Jews influence, and I do believe Christians influence. And it has seeped into multiple facets of Judaism. I don't know if we previously talked about this, but Jews don't believe in hell.
Rest of the book?
So the way that hell came about was a mixture of the Hebrew word Sheol, which just means the grave. Everybody goes there. And hell, H-E-L, from Teutonic Norse hell that Christians kind of grab onto. We haba for Hashem and talk and say, hey, why did you, he opens, they open, she opens, it doesn't matter, opens a book and says, here was your life. Let's talk about what you did. And then you go through a, let's say, spiritual washing machine where your neshama, your soul, is purified. But it's not a hell. It's literally, let's talk about this. And why did you do these things? And why did you make these decisions? And even the most evil person, we do not believe. So speak to have their soul, a place of truth
Mm-hmm.
where they can make up for their mistakes.
Mm.
They can say, but one of the ways that Christianity has seeped in is I've had a lot of, I know Jews from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been moments where these women will tell me, especially women,
Mm-hmm.
that they've been told their whole lives that if they don't dress modestly, sinut, like I do.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm kind of sinut light, as you can see my collarbone.
Sinut light, I like it.
But if they do not dress, sinut, then they will be forced to wear clothes dipped in acid every day in a lom haba for eternity, and they will go to hell. We don't believe in hell.
Right. Like, where'd you get that from, people?
Thing. Where is that coming in? We also, another classic way is we don't believe in self-flagellation.
Mm-hmm.
So the only day that we are really down on ourselves, Day of Atonement.
Mm-hmm.
Because as Jews, if you do something wrong, to do teshuvah oneself.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't God that you screwed over.
Mm-hmm.
You do teshuvah with the person that you screwed over.
Mm-hmm.
So the only day that we sit and outwardly talk about how badly we've done or things that we know we've done, now written prayer books, a specific prayer that people are saying twice a day that is all about how they're a bad person. Prayer book from a temple that I grew up in, and I was like, it's not in here. Why is it in this one?
Yeah.
Why are we suddenly angry at ourselves and telling ourselves we're terrible people? We're not. We're human beings.
That's by Bart Ehrman called Heaven and Hell, the History of the Afterlife. It's amazing. And he talks a lot of...
Interesting.
It's amazing. I highly... And he talks also about co-occurring Greek and Roman ideologies. And he's bringing it around to the idea of how hell is kind of like more Dante. It is, right? And the doctrine of hell that is currently perpetuated, I think, is one of the most damaging things that folks have done, that you're fundamentally flawed and literally every breath you take is sinful unless you are saved. And like, this is what you're taught. And I don't think that that's the point. What motivation is it? Like, I fucking suck, bro. Like, how do you...
I would agree with. Why would you, and are you truly a good person if the only reason you're being a good person is because you're afraid
of hell,
that if you aren't a good person, you're going to be burning forever?
Yeah.
I never have understood that. Even growing up, I was like, if you're familiar with the comics Penn and Teller, I don't know if you're old enough.
Yeah.
To remember Penn and Teller. One of them said these words that kind of have stuck with me because he's an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, if you don't, somebody said, well, if you don't believe in God, what's to keep you from raping people? And he's like, I do rape as many people as I want to. Zero. Because I don't want to.
Right.
I don't need someone telling me bad things. Don't do bad things.
Like human, it wasn't originally the name of a person that appeared in a garden. Yes, exactly. And that to me is so freeing, because the first time I ever encountered a theology that didn't include hating yourself, the first time I heard a theology that didn't include the idea of original sin, I was in my 20s, in my mid-20s, and I have studied Christianity. I didn't just go to church. I double-fisted the Kool-Aid. For high school, I was doing the thing, right? And I was in my mid-20s the first time I heard the idea that maybe you aren't fucked from the start. You know what I mean? I hope this video doesn't get taken down, but really, it's that dramatic, right? And
well, I'll give you another thing that's gonna blow. That Chava or Eve ate the apple. It was only Adam. So there's nowhere in Torah that says, Chava, you aren't allowed to eat this. Only Adam was told, hey, you can't eat this. But, women, including in Judaism, have been blamed for being kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
And what's ridiculous is that doctrine of original sin and female... that has affected so many turning to the center that I want to talk about. Because if we're going to talk about shit, like the Sumerians must have been really surprised that the world before that.
Now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in Judaism, that is now pervasive. You know, we have matriarchs, these strong Jewish matriarchs, Rachel and Leah and Sarah and Deborah and, you know, Esther.
Esther's
Ruth,
a boss.
Who is the whole scene, strong women. And yet in 2021, we have misogyny in Judaism that says a woman's face can't be printed.
Yeah.
Because it might make a man think sexual things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So instead you have these ads showing, I mean, I'm fine with that. Maybe they're being queer, but you're saying that women.
Wow.
So wanted to have an interview with me, I would not be called Heather Johnson or even by my Hebrew name, Hannah Johnson. It would be seen. The thing is that is not what our actual texts tell us. Our actual texts tell us that women and that the Torah, we are born with the Torah inscribed in our hearts, which is why we are closer to God's image than men are.
Yes.
And our Kabbalah tells us that God counts the tears. They see how many women cry for Moshiach.
Bill Gaffney, and it was really redemptive because she went back in all, she's a rabbi first, right? She's like a rabbi with a PhD, and she's a black woman, which is great because what she does is she goes back and gives voice. And she does it with her education. I think that I really don't think that most people even know what I know. Really being okay with and give a queer person, Jewish person, right? Like how does that work for you?
Well, let me preface this with another. If you love, she is a colleague of mine, a priest. She is a beautiful miss.
We love to see it. Can you?
Judaism, there are places in the Torah that, let's be honest, they make no sense. I'm sure that happens in New Testament where you're like, how did they get from A to B?
Yep.
How did that happen?
Yep.
Go through there and go, well, if we look back at this part of Torah, we can see this. And they fill out Dina.
Okay.
There is a wonderful midrashist. Her name is Anita Diamant.
Okay.
She wrote a book called The Red Tent.
Okay.
And it was about Dinah. And for those of you who are not familiar, Dinah was one of the daughters of Jacob. And in the Torah, it just says that she was taken. Men have to circumcise yourself. It's our sister, and we're going to go and kill her. Actually, she chose to go to a different tribe, fleshing them out so that you get a better picture of what the possibilities were based on anthropological knowledge of the time.
But it's not a guess. It's based on knowledge and anthropology and previous sections of Torah. But it really susses.
Exactly. A queer woman. I've been married to my wife for 10 years. And here's the thing. There is nothing in the Torah. Is the thing someone hones in on when they want to talk to me about me being a gay rabbi is, how can you be gay and a rabbi? Here we go. It's always sad. It's always in Leviticus 18:22. I'm like, get a new verse, guys.
Literally, just find something else, please.
Anything else. I'm like, well, let's get into that. Let us say for a moment that is how you read it. The Hebrew doesn't. So we have that. But it also says nothing about women. So even if you took that the most literal, strictest translation, it still doesn't apply to me.
Yeah. If you're a top.
Well, being a queer person, but not when I was a kid. So I'm 6 years old, sitting in temple with my mom, and I say, I'm going to grow up and be a priest. And she says, Jews don't have priests. We don't have nuns, honey. We have rabbis. Go and do it. And that's one of the reasons why I say, and you probably have seen on my Facebook page, that I am a rebel rabbi.
Yes, yes.
Because I am in a job that the majority of Jews will tell me that I am not qualified for based on my gender, based on my queerness, that God does not like me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, my entire life, all God has ever done is love me.
Yeah. Yep.
So
how
I'm
can you
like-
be a gay rabbi? I just am. Like, I just stumbled into this. Like,
when I discussed,
Mhm.
you know, I had to feel like the struggle that I went through, me. I don't care what institutions tell me. I don't care that you're trying to tell me that because I'm queer and
Mhm.
because I'm, you know, a female, that I can't understand Torah.
Yeah.
We have proof in our own ancient texts of women who honored sages. Woman.
Why do you think it is that people think you can't be queer and Jewish?
Because
Do you think there's any part of Christianity that is reflexive back on that, or is it people that are Jewish and they're outside of Christianity's influence?
Jews, we cling to tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who are on the forefront of pushing tradition forward, kadima, forward, must be set aside.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And say, well, you're not a real rabbi.
Right.
I worked my rear end off to get here.
Yeah.
And where you're like, and be with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they just are misogynistic. And
Mhm.
it is an unfortunate outcome that Jews are, they try to say that they're not. We
Right.
are very much a patriarchal society, even more than Christianity.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
women take care of the house, the home, especially if you're a queer, doesn't say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they come back with, well, the Talmud, yeah, but those were other rabbis.
Right.
Show me in the Torah.
Right. Yeah.
There is one ish vesakor. Zakor being male, depending how you pesach, meaning interpret,
Mm-hmm.
how you judge as a rabbi is everything. You will have rabbis who go, no, it means.
We might. I always mark these videos as not for kids, so they shouldn't get reported.
Okay.
If they get reported on YouTube, they're on.
That you come up with that activity as their sexual response.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, that there's nothing else.
Nothing else.
Because that's not what that was about.
Mm-hmm.
He promised God he would help raise up his brother's house, and he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it had nothing to do with the spilling of seed, and you can't really use that, or at least you shouldn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing about loving people who are in, or not even loving people, just people who are adults and consenting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is the thing. It is considered. It's not a big thing.
Right.
It is not. It's more like a sore. It's
Mhm.
not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not like if I broke Sabbath.
Right.
Right. I understood that.
And so in your study of Torahism, and I think that's been nature for a long time. I actually went through a long. Did you not have that rub? Okay.
Oh, I did. I definitely went through. I didn't come out and praying member of P-Flag.
I love it.
She is my staunchest, like, you know, my daughter is queer. What kind of life am I I've been out since I was 18 and this is my life. I was like, could I theoretically have that?
Yeah.
And then that was a block for me becoming a rabbi. Who's going to want a gay rabbi?
Right.
And my wife said, there are going to be people in the world who need you. Whether or not you want this, there are going to be people.
It's the same. And what's funny is I love that because from her.
My wife's a Norse pagan. Have all been okay.
Okay.
You have one of our most famous sages, Hillel.
Okay.
And he's kind of an idol of mine. He actually helped create our laws, and because of the way he became a rabbi is kind of what inspired me to do it my way, the way that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And he surmised that there are 6 genders in Judaism. So the idea that it was about 1,000 years ago. He was alive in the 1100s.
Okay.
So his idea of gender, of course, was more sex characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we know in 2021 that sex and gender are not the same thing.
Yes, we do.
And so process to the way that we see sex and gender in modern age.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we find people like me find ourselves. you're fluid. Okay. So that would mean you're a tum-tum, someone who is both, you know, so that's where we start pushing forward and saying, hey, we're still within the halakhic boundary.
Yeah.
Our law, halakha.
Yeah.
Judaic law. We're still within halakhic boundary, but we're recognizing that Judaism means everyone. You know, when the Talmud was written, they had no idea that we were going to have iPods. They had no idea we were going to have cars, that we were going to have electricity. So now do I get to turn on a light?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's where we're at, you know?
Yeah.
Well, we don't stone anybody because it's barbaric.
Right.
We know better.
Right.
And so we do better.
Right.
Okay, so I have a man. That's what we're doing right now. You know, do I get to be counted with men as part of our minyan, or how many men are in a prayer circle? Or do I still have to do as well as the
all
women,
of
you know?
everybody involved?
So we had to start coming up with ways that we re-identify these genders. So yeah, of course. So we have Zakar, which just means male. That would be someone who is assigned male at birth and identifies as a man.
Okay.
You're cis with sexuality birth.
Okay.
Then someone who is either gender fluid or someone who is, you know, I feel had kind of, I interpret that as someone who is non-binary.
Okay.
Would be considered a tum-tum, someone who is, gender is not female.
Yeah.
Their gender is male.
Yeah.
Like a trans man would be considered
right
that.
on.
And then Cyrus is the other way.
Okay.
Someone who is assigned male at birth, but
is female. Yeah. Yeah.
So all of those meant sex characteristics. But characteristics, not the same thing.
Yeah.
So we have Jews.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have, and people are leaving Judaism in droves. I know they are in Christianity too.
Yes.
I know that people are leaving because they do not feel connected to their faith, because their faith is telling them they are inherently wrong.
Yes.
So they start going, well, if God doesn't love me, why you want me to show up for?
Right. Exactly.
Why do I have to hate on myself?
Yeah.
Now, I know in Christianity, there is some sort of idea that if you're gay, you're supposed to be abstinent.
Yes, there is that faction.
We don't have that. It is a mitzvah. It is a commandment that we are supposed to find someone to spend our life with.
Okay.
Because you are not whole unless you have your beshert or besherta, your destiny.
Okay.
So the idea of asking someone to live their life celibate when you know that a commandment, that's torture.
Yeah.
I do that to myself.
No.
And that is the main reason that as a queer person, I said, well, if other queer people look at me and go, well, she's a rabbi and she's queer and she's a rabbi, maybe it's okay. Maybe I'm okay. And that is the bulk of my congregation are trans Jews who have been you can attend congregation prayer, but you can't be counted as a minyan because
right.
Or you can't stand on the women's side of the mahitza because
the way that I was made, like I think that
I don't know you nothing.
Yeah, I think that there's a verse in Proverbs, and I can never remember the reference, but it says, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Like, this is a common Christian verse that's used especially in purity culture. But I think there's been a massive misunderstanding of that verse, because I believe that it's valid, and I believe it's valid for this reason. Because I believe that we are all created in whatever unique practice was to accept real power source of your existence. You do not serve the world by trying to better your inadequacies is the heart of the practice. I think it's so activated in the world to create the kingdom of heaven, if you will, on earth as it is now. And that go ahead.
Yeah, that is definitely a Jewish ideal. We have something that we don't concern ourselves with Olam Haba. We are supposed to come Olam, which is to repair the world, what we live in, our nations. We are supposed to, one of our sins, neither are you allowed better, but you have to continue to go forward and keep doing your best to get there.
That is fantastic. Like, you don't have to finish the work, but
you aren't required to finish it.
Right.
It's not all on you.
It's not all on you, but it is on you for a little bit. You know what I mean? And you can't do that little bit. You can't do that little bit unless you're operating from your you-ness. Religion needs defense of our usness. In a world that tells us, for whatever bullshit reasons, that we can't be. But I got a dove tattooed on my arm because in the Christian scriptures, Jesus's ministry began was a dove descending. That I have never been meanness that was within in a way that I had never tapped into before. And I think that any religion that tells you that you are wrong, percent of the world has to carry.
That I had faith than that I had a religion. You know, I have a faith in something bigger than me, and that is my job.
Yes.
And that has
not necessarily have anything to do with profession, but it does have to do with vocation. And so that is
true.
You know what I mean? So no matter where I'm at, this is as the central part. You know, I'm just so cute. I would love if you could wrap me up that we can do together then.
We're strong though.
Yeah.
You know, no matter claim.
Yes.
Right where we are.
So I say this all the time. For so long, I had to deal with the church. Well, guess what? Now the church has to deal with me because you cannot discredit me.
That's exactly how I feel about Judaism. Because I will do that. I know not a lot. He was a Cohen. So I will say this. I say this a lot to a lot of people. The rabbi for everybody. I'm not going to be the queer person thing that I am. That's what can't be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in my petty patty moment, like, boy, bye. And in my bigger
So I will be like, oh, you talk to me like that. But of course I'm writing, what I'm seeing here is, but I'm just like,
yeah, bitch, please. And that is where the queer comes out.
My wife is just like, so some Jew made you mad today.
Oh, right. It's a whole, I want to do a whole podcast with my wife about that, talking about my professional. Anybody that would want to contact you.
Of course. So I'm Rabbi Heather Johnson. I have a Facebook page for my Facebook. I'm out
here. Jews, some queer Muslims.